Hello, lovely luminary. Welcome back to the astrology of the upcoming week, our last full week of October, October 24th through 30th. This week, we don't have a whole lot of things going on, which is great because we are really making space to lift that veil, to embrace the uncertainty. For those of us that practice the pagan traditions, we are celebrating the end of the harvest season, the beginning of the winter, that midway point, also known as Samhain. Welcome to the Savvy Luminary podcast, Astrology for Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Leslie Tagorda, creator of the Astrobrand Method, business astrologer, brand designer, author, and Aquarius boss woman. I help visionary spiritual entrepreneurs and impact makers like you illuminate and amplify your unique star powers so you can be the luminary you were born to be. Luminaries. Oh my gosh, how was last week for you? What kind of revelations have you had? I just remember just like that full moon in Aries was just so potent and so powerful. I know not just for me, but for like my customers too. It's just been so wonderful to witness and to hold space and to see all the revelations of all of the debilitating small talk that we constantly tell ourselves that really get in the way of our ultimate leadership or from, grasping our big dreams and our business. I feel that full moon just gave us the space to release and let go. You may not think that this like little self-talk is so debilitating, but it's really like these like death by 1,000 cuts because we are constantly telling ourselves these little stories, these little narratives. And I know personally for me, I've done a lot of work in recognizing my little narratives. And I constantly am trying to remind my customers to start recognizing those little stories because these thoughts, they go through our minds so quickly that they become really big beliefs, and we're not really recognizing the words that they are telling us. So for example, like if you hear yourself always like berating yourself, like, oh, I'm so stupid, or fuck my life, or why does this always happen to me? These little things that are constantly going through your inner dialogue are really creating the reality in your life. I remember I used to think that I've done a lot of work. I've had so many debilitating, crippling self-doubt where I would sabotage myself like all the time, always around worthiness, that like I wasn't good enough, I wasn't talented enough, that somebody was always better than me. And I've done my work and I've really found my power. But my friend Asha Frost, and you hear me talk about her all the time because I'm just so connected to her. And she invited me to her beautiful full moon ceremony last week, and with her, from her kind of indigenous medicine woman standpoint, just this beautiful ceremony where we welcomed in buffalo medicine. Um, she pulled a card for me, and she asked a question about these like limiting self-beliefs, and we both were teaching on the same theme but like approaching them in different ways. And no matter where you are in your path, you need somebody who is reflecting things back to you, because she had just this beautiful way of asking me this question that made me realize I'm still working with limiting self-belief things. So for example, I go to a lot of astrologers, I go to a lot of intuitives, and I kid you not, just the miracles that have just all aligned in just the last week since I've talked to you have just been really uncanny. So first of all, I went to my business astrologer, and my business astrologer was like really pushing me to really amp my core message and really open up and make it bigger. And I was really, really resistant. To tell you the truth, I was like, I felt my energy lower, and I was like, oh no, know, she's asking like, didn't I already update my core message? Isn't it already good enough? And she was like, Leslie, you need to open up your core message because you're meant to reach millions of people. And she was looking at my chart. She was looking at my sun, Jupiter conjunction in the ninth house. And, you know, as soon as she told me I was supposed to like reach a million people, I was like, who are you kidding? Like, I can't possibly meet like, you know, reach a million people. I'm meant to serve, you know, a tiny but mighty community. I'm not big enough. I'm not talented enough. Why would a million people want to hear and be connected to me? Notice the debilitating self-negative talk that, you know, is keeping me small. And so when Asha's full moon ceremony came forth, she asked me this question and I was like, oh, I didn't even recognize that inner dialogue of who am I to meet a million, like to reach a million people as limiting self-belief. And so I said, you know what? And Asha didn't know about my story with my astrologer about the million people. And so just in the little chat, I typed out that I'm ready to release the small talk that says that I'm not big enough or good enough to reach many, many, many people. And so, you know, of course, we're doing these ceremonies on Zoom and I'm just putting like my things in the chat. And Asha's like, many, many, many people? No, millions of people. I was like, whoa, okay, I guess this is a theme. And so Asha pulled a card for me that like literally like just like made me cry. And she said that I now see my wings that are so big that will help me soar. And that she now sees like this veil, this invisibility cloak that has been lifted. And when she said those things to me, it brought me to tears. I felt for so long in my business and in my life that I walk around just completely unnoticeable until people like get into closer into my orb. Like I've always felt really like it's hard to describe. Even in like growing up, I've always felt like really invisible until people choose to come into my orb and then they see me and they're like, oh, where have you been this whole time? I'm like, I've been right here. Like, listen, like nobody can see me. And so it was so moving to hear this from Asha. And I also was talking with Tracy Neely a few weeks ago, and she was telling me, you know, Leslie, something really big is coming for you. And she was telling me that I see this woman, she's younger and she is a really talented astrologer and she's funny as heck. And she doesn't quite yet see her full power. And you're going to work with her. She's going to work with you and she's going to really help you. And you're really going to help her. And I was like, I don't even have a job description up. Yes, I need some help with like you know, Jeff and I, we are just constantly, there's only two of us really, right? And we're creating all of this content. Sometimes there's mistakes, but there's two of us and we're just cranking out content. And I was like, well, I guess, you know, I'll be open if somebody, you know, was to come into my life to help me. And literally an hour after I was talking with Tracy Neely saying as she was saying, like this very specific person coming into my life, I get a DM in my Instagram account from a past client who is going through her solar Saturn return, almost Saturn return. She's that young, she's not quite there yet. And I remember like when I was doing her chart, like how witty and how brilliant and how funny she was. And so when I got the DM from her, I was like, oh, that's her. I was like, this is who Tracy said was calling in. And like, you know, when things are meant to just like flow, when things are meant to happen, things move so quickly. It wasn't even like 24 hours later that we already had a call scheduled on the books. After our call, like she started right away and she was just been helping me. The first project, because of the timing, was putting together the November forecast. So I'm really excited to, you know, show this November work and how she's really helped me edit things and help me kind of cultivate some of my messages and bring them even more to life in the social media feed. So, you know, start noticing how that changes. But going back to, so Tracy Neely telling me somebody was coming into my life, and then then the editor coming in so quickly. And then Asha, as soon as she told me that my veil has been lifted, an hour later, I get a call from the team of somebody who is highly influential. I can't share the details yet, but let's just say that this projector, if you know anything about human design, has received a red carpet invitation. And that red carpet invitation, I just love that term. That term was coined by Milana Jade, a beautiful, sparkly, young human design expert. She coined that term for projectors to be waiting for their red carpet invitations. And an hour after Asha said that my invisibility cloak has been lifted, I received the most amazing invitation. And I can't wait to share that with you. That's coming up soon. Can't tell you the details now. So, just to babble forth, this has been an incredible week for me, and my heart is filled with gratitude and just not necessarily surprise as in shock, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening, but surprise and awe and astounding and astoundedness. I don't even know what that word is, of just like how quickly things fall into place once you decide to let things go. Once you decide that you're done with keeping small and that you're ready to embrace your big dreams that you know that you have in you, once you decide to let go of all of those self-limiting beliefs, what is possible. So what just happened for me this past week can happen for you, certainly. And I am not a spring chicken. This has taken a lifetime for me to get here, but things can happen fast. So this week, as we're coming forth towards, we're officially in Scorpio season, as we're coming up to Halloween, which is kind of our sugared up, distilled down version of, pulling the veil down between our ancestors and ourselves for Samhain. It's just going to be so, so beautiful. So let's get into the astrology. I'm sure you're done listening to me talk. All right. This week, the quote that I pulled is from an author named Mandy Hale. Mandy Hale writes, "Trust the wait, embrace the uncertainty, enjoy the beauty of becoming. When nothing is certain, anything is possible." I mean, that is just it. That adds to kind of these ideas of letting go of limiting self-belief and making space for what is to come. Sometimes you don't, I know for these dreams, sometimes you don't have this clear vision of exactly what that dream is. Another story I want to share that I just shared on social media. I'm recording this on Friday, October 22nd. And earlier today, Jeff and I were talking because I got a reminder from GoDaddy. And, if you're still using GoDaddy, they don't have the best practices. So I highly recommend finding a better host, just because I don't like some of their practices, but that's another story. Sorry to digress. But I got a notification on GoDaddy saying that I had this domain and it's up for renewal. And I hadn't used this domain since 2017. And it was for this passion project of mine called Bliss Kit, where I was creating these new moon ritual kits. This is before I started bringing astrology into my business. I had always loved astrology. I'd always loved new moons. And I've been, practicing consistent new moon rituals since about 2012, 2013. And because I loved them so much and I wasn't really ready to come out of the spiritual closet and integrate my spirituality into my business, I put together these passion projects for 3 years where I'd write all these new moon rituals out. I'd print them out on these beautifully designed cards because, of course, I'm a designer. I got my friend at Life Boutique in San Francisco to put a custom scent for me together for these 12 incense sticks that you would light when you did your rituals. I designed these matches and these pens and these notebooks and assembled hundreds of kits right before the new year. And so I was creating these kits and I loved them so much. But today I got that domain notification like, hey, you need to renew your domain. And I was like, Jeff, do we need to still keep this domain or are we done with this? And Jeff gave me the permission to say, we're done. We've outgrown it. But why I wanted to tell you that story in terms of this quote of nothing is when nothing is certain, anything is possible. It was like the last year that I made those kits was 2017. So I would have made that in 2016. And I had just had my baby. I just gotten married. My life was like turned upside down. And at that time, I had no idea yet that I was going to be building astrology as a huge part of my business and take everything of my design and my branding experience and weave it into with astrology and create something that was so much bigger and so much more bright and so much more impactful. I had no idea, but I trusted the wait. I embraced the uncertainty. I embraced the journey. Like, even though I'm older and I'm kind of like, well, some people would consider late to the game, like I needed to go on the scenic route to become to be where I'm at today and to really embrace and be full of gratitude for this process. So I'm asking you this week to start noticing your journey. Start noticing, if you look back, 5 years, 6 years, 12 years of the little things that you're putting together that have added up to where you are today. Those are some of the things that I want to give gratitude. In reality, like those little creations, you can think of them as like little ancestors of your business, of where you are today. And so, as you also in your own spiritual practice and in your own personal life this week, as we build up to All Souls Day, or Day of the Dead, or whichever cultural practice that you have where you're honoring your ancestors, this is the time of year where the veil lifts between the past and the present. So notice that. Okay, so this week, let's dive into the astrology. This week, we have some big shifts behind us. Thank you. But things are not yet that clear, yet they aren't completely unclear. This week, you get to sit with all of it before you leap into your next thing, your next event, next launch, next action. Practice rest, practice mystery. And if you have space in your energetic field, try to close up those loose ends and put to rest the things that no longer serve you. Okay, on October 26th, that is a Tuesday, Venus squares off with Neptune at 6:06 p.m. Pacific, 9:06 p.m. Eastern, where Venus square Neptune, quick-lived unclarity. Neptune sometimes, makes things a little bit foggy or sparkly or rainbow colored, but it, it filters it. So we can't really see things with clarity. So how can you recognize avoidance and disillusion in your business, relationships, and finances? Yep. That's Venus there. For a fleeting few days, you may not be able to see things clearly. Maybe there are fantasies or confusion you've created in business and personal relationships, or even money matters. You can't tell if things are up or down. And if you're experiencing any letdowns in relationships or money, do your best to contain your energy so you aren't drained and strained. Best to wait for making investments or commitments during this time. Even if the fantasy is alluring, wait a few days till the fog lifts. Instead, channel this energy into a creative project like design, art, music, or even creative writing. This is especially triggering for mutable signs, luminaries who have lots of Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Pisces. Venus will be at Sagittarius of 20 degrees, squaring off with Neptune retrograde at Pisces of 20 degrees. On the 28th, we have our fourth quarter moon in Leo of 5 degrees. This happens at exactly 1:05 p.m. Pacific, 4:05 p.m. Eastern, where we are sparking the time to rest so that you can love yourself. It's a great day to explore self-love. With today's fourth quarter moon, you may feel hypercritical in your business, a sense of doubt or dread that really wants you to focus on all that you've actually truly accomplished. Sometimes when you get that doubt is asking you to master, to look, to see what you've already done. So in order to separate fiction from truth, practice self-love today as a balm for doubt. Review the facts in your business. Praise from happy customers, journal entries from happier days, toot your own horn, and focus on gratitude. You have accomplished so much, and the only person whose recognition you need is your own. You know that the last quarter moon phase is an integration phase in your life and your business. It is a time to integrate and cultivate all that you've learned on your inner self and your outer self and assess what you want to continue with and what you want to turn back into the earth as nourishment for the seeds you've planted. On the 30th, we have a couple of things going on. We have the Sun square Saturn, as well as Mars entering Scorpio. The theme of the day is kind of like limiting. It feels limits and acting inward, is what I wrote. Two shifts today with the Sun, your radiant talent, and Saturn, your discipline, squaring off, and Mars, your physical active drive, entering his traditional transformative home sign of Scorpio. So let's first talk about the Sun square off with Saturn. This happens in the wee morning at 2:53 a.m. Pacific, 5:53 a.m. Eastern, where inner creative limits is the theme. What constraints are you now aware of that show you your limit? Well, this sounds like a downer. If you reframe it, it isn't. We sometimes resist limits, but limits can show us where the line is, where we best not pass. You may have a set budget or a set time frame or a set number of characters or words for a post, but when you know this constraint, you can optimize and maximize within those limits. There is a certain limit that you now fully realize internally, one that you might not have seen before, and instead of letting it weigh you down, celebrate this because now you know exactly the framework from which you can maximize and focus your expertise. This will be especially intense for fixed sign luminaries, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Sun at Scorpio of 7 degrees, squaring off with Saturn at Aquarius of 7 degrees. Later on that morning, Mars enters its home sign of Scorpio, 7:21 a.m. Pacific, 10:21 a.m. Eastern, where the theme for this Mars and Mars in Scorpio season is activate with mystery and magic. What inner trusting work will you initiate this season? Now through December 13th, Mars spends its time in its traditional home sign of Scorpio. Mars is now in its full power for the next few weeks, adding physical magnetism and drive to do the inner work in your business. Don't be afraid of this power. Instead, use this energy to do your inner work. The journey of inner work in your business is never complete. As you expand and evolve, you learn and experience new things that need to be integrated wholly into your power. Trust as you act on this inner healing that you become more authentically you, trusting in your own innate power. The effect is subtle yet profound. As you become a better version of you, you become an irresistible force that magnetizes your business. If you have a natal Mars in Scorpio, you get motivated by transformation and power. To be honest, you definitely have a certain sex appeal and presence that cannot be denied. Recognize and harness this power without manipulation. Not everyone has this power. If you have planets or angles in Scorpio, as Mars drives through, expect a boost of energy, activating your natal planets over the next 6 weeks. Okay, luminaries, that is all I have for you today. Thank you for listening this much. Really, a couple of things I would love for you to do. I'm thinking about the forecasts for 2022, and I want to make them so much more impactful and useful for you. So I would love to hear what you really appreciate and want more of, and what you kind of gloss over and isn't that useful. That way, that'll help me focus my energy on creating something that is more useful for you in your business. I'm really looking forward to 2022 and working with the stars and teaching you how to do the same. If you want to get in contact with me, please head over to my Instagram at New Moon Creative CO and send me a DM, or you can always head on over to my free Facebook group and send a post to me there. Lastly, I'm on the fence about having a Scorpio new moon ceremony. It feels super powerful, but it feels really intimate and personal. And so if you normally come to one of my new moon ceremonies and you're like, yes, please, Leslie, I want a new moon ceremony in community, then let's do it. I'll be waiting to hear from you. All right. Talk to you soon, luminaries. If you love this podcast, please consider doing me a favor and heading over to Apple iTunes and leaving me a rating and review. Your rating and review helps this humble podcast get seen and found by more listeners like you. Please share the love.